The Sy'lar Hegemony governed its vast, interconnected empire with an unparalleled mastery of information. Their society was a marvel of synchronized communication, every thought, every datum, every nuance of intent instantly and perfectly transmitted across their psionic networks. Their minds were linked in a harmonious chorus of shared knowledge, their command structures flawless, their tactical decisions made with absolute unified clarity. There were no secrets among the Sy'lar, no misunderstandings, no discordant opinions. Only the pure, resonant symphony of perfect information. Their military, therefore, was an extension of this absolute unity. Their fleets moved as one, their starships executing complex maneuvers with the precision of a single, colossal organism. Their strategies were developed by the collective intelligence of countless minds, optimized for maximum efficiency and minimum waste. Their electronic warfare capabilities were legendary, designed to disrupt and silence any opposing communications, leaving enemies disoriented, isolated, and vulnerable. To fight the Sy'lar was to fight a single, perfectly coordinated mind, spread across 1,000 star systems. When the Sy'lar Hegemony first encountered the Terran Federation, their initial reaction was one of profound, almost painful bewilderment. Humanity was, to their perfectly synchronized senses, a cacophony of noise. Our communications were a chaotic mess of competing frequencies, redundant transmissions, and constant, often meaningless chatter. Our minds were isolated, fragmented, things, filled with internal monologues, conflicting emotions, and wildly divergent interpretations of reality. We were, in the Sy'lar's view, a biological and technological noise pollution. High Seer Valix, a Sy'lar of unparalleled psionic capacity and information processing ability, was tasked with analyzing this new, dissonant species. Their report to the Hegemony's ruling council was a masterpiece of understated disgust. Species designation: human. Valix's melodic thought forms resonated in the council chamber. They are a species of noise. Their communication networks are a chaotic tangle of redundant data, their command structures fragmented by individual thought and emotional interference. They transmit at every conceivable frequency, often simultaneously, their signals filled with irrelevant data and an astonishing amount of social discourse. They are, in essence, a biological and technological jamming field, albeit an unintentional one. The Sy'lar Council, after a period of serene contemplation, deemed humanity to be a Tier 9 dissonant species. They were a threat not for their power, but for their sheer, unadulterated noise. Their worlds were to be quarantined, their communications suppressed, their populations to be systematically silenced and, if necessary, pacified into a more harmonious existence. The war, a conflict humanity would later call the Cacophony War, had begun. The Sy'lar Hegemony's war effort was terrifyingly efficient. Their fleets did not engage in direct combat initially. Instead, they deployed vast electronic warfare arrays, emitting highly focused psionic dampening fields and communication nullifiers. Their goal was to silence humanity, to cut off their fragmented command chains and leave them floundering in isolation. Humanity, dependent on its complex and often redundant communication networks, quickly found itself in disarray. Fleets lost contact with command, ground units lost contact with orbital support, and individual ships found their internal comms systems overwhelmed by an eerie, suffocating silence. The Sy'lar, with their unified psionic network, were unaffected, moving with seamless coordination as humanity descended into localized chaos. On the command bridge of the TDFS Chatterbox, a salvaged civilian data mining vessel repurposed for electronic warfare, Admiral Anya Sharma stared grimly at the silent tactical displays. "Our comms are completely jammed. We can't talk to Fleet Command, we can't talk to our sister ships, we can't even get a clear internal comms channel. They're isolating us." Dr. Alistair Vance, a lean, intense man with the disheveled hair of a deep space data archivist, stepped forward. Vance was not a military officer, but a specialist in ancient human communication theory, a scholar of forgotten radio frequencies and the chaotic birth of the Internet. His project, Project Babel, had been largely ignored by the Terran military, seen as an academic curiosity rather than a strategic asset. "Admiral," Vance began, his voice surprisingly calm amidst the oppressive silence, "the Sy'lar are masters of silence. They understand that by cutting off our communication, they cut off our command. They assume that a species with fragmented minds will collapse without perfect information." He paused, a faint, almost mischievous smile playing on his lips. "But what if that's not a weakness? What if, for them, our chaos is the ultimate weapon?" He then displayed a series of holographic projections, ancient human radio broadcasts, overlapping signals from early satellite communications, the complex, often chaotic architecture of the Internet, filled with redundant pathways and constant low-level chatter. He showed how these networks, though messy, were incredibly resilient, how information found a way, even through static and noise. "For millennia," Vance continued, "humanity has lived in a constant battle against communication failure. We have learned to transmit through static, to find meaning in garbled signals, to rebuild networks from scratch. We don't need perfect information. We can operate on a good enough principle of communication. More importantly, our individual minds are accustomed to making decisions without perfect, unified input. My proposal," Vance concluded, his eyes blazing with conviction, "is to deploy Project Babel. We cannot out-silence the Sy'lar. We cannot out-synchronize them, but we can out-noise them. We can unleash the one weapon they have no defense against, the sheer, unbridled, glorious cacophony of human communication. We will become the Cacophony Corps." The High Command stared, bewildered. Was Vance suggesting they fight a war by deliberately making more noise? It was, to their logically ordered minds, a profoundly illogical concept. But then again, so was everything else about humanity, and they were desperately, hopelessly silent. Project Babel was activated. It was a radical, almost absurd gamble. Its recruits were not soldiers in the conventional sense, but volunteers drawn from every discipline of human communication. Radio amateurs, internet archivists, cryptographers, even professional social media influencers and chaotic multiplayer gamers. Their mission: to generate so much raw, redundant, and often utterly meaningless data that the Sy'lar's elegant information network would be overloaded. Major Elena Rostova, a grimly practical former signals intelligence officer who had spent years sifting through enemy chatter and human spam, was put in charge of the first Cacophony Corps deployment. She understood the power of noise. The Sy'lar, in their methodical suppression, had blanketed the Terran-held sector with their psionic dampening fields and communication nullifiers. The human fleet was struggling to coordinate, their systems crippled by the silence. On the bridge of the chatterbox, Vance and Rostova worked with their team of noise architects. "They've increased their dampening field strength," a comms officer reported, static hissing in the air. "We're completely cut off from the Vanguard fleet." Rostova, however, remained calm. "Good. Now initiate Operation White Noise. Open every non-essential, low-power comms channel, broadcast on every available frequency. Cycle through every known ancient human broadcast protocol, AM, FM, shortwave, analog television, dial-up modem tones. Flood the spectrum. Don't try to transmit meaningful data. Just transmit everything. The chatterbox and its accompanying Cacophony Corps ships began to do exactly that. They didn't try to punch through the Sy'lar silence. They simply filled the void with an overwhelming, chaotic blast of human communication. Ancient pop songs, conspiracy theories, amateur radio chatter, encrypted spam, cat videos. Every byte of human digital detritus was broadcast simultaneously on every available frequency at low overlapping power. The effect on the Sy'lar was catastrophic. Their psionic networks, designed for the elegant transmission of pure information, were suddenly bombarded by an incomprehensible wave of noise. Their highly sensitive receivers, optimized for clarity, were overloaded by the sheer volume of redundant, meaningless data. Their unified minds, accustomed to perfect harmony, were assaulted by a screeching, dissonant cacophony. High Seer Valix, monitoring the situation, watched in horror as his subordinate units reported system failures and cognitive overload. Their transmissions, they are illogical. They are transmitting meaningless data. There is no pattern, no coherent intent. Our receivers, they are overloading. Our command network is experiencing dissonance. The Sy'lar, designed for perfect information, had no concept of filtering out intentional noise. They had no defense against a species that deliberately generated so much useless data that their elegant systems choked on it. Their attempts to filter the human transmissions only consumed more processing power, further exacerbating the problem. Meanwhile, within the overwhelming blanket of human noise, Rostova's team sent tiny, low-power, encrypted bursts of actual vital information, hopping between random frequencies buried within the static. These were the whispers in the noise, easily missed by the overloaded Sy'lar, but perfectly intelligible to human receivers, accustomed to sifting through chaos. The Battle of the Silent Veil was not a decisive victory, but it was not a defeat. Humanity had re-established localized command, had begun to coordinate, and had done so by overwhelming the enemy not with force, but with sheer, unadulterated noise. The Cacophony War had begun in earnest. The success at Silent Veil, though, incomprehensible to the Sy'lar, was undeniable. Humanity, a species with no coherent communications doctrine, had somehow disrupted their perfect information network. High Seer Valix ordered an analysis of the human noise. They are not chaotic, Valix projected to the hegemonies. Council, a new note of apprehension in their thought forms. They are redundant. Their networks are designed to tolerate immense amounts of interference. And their minds, they are not unified. They are individual. They can make decisions without constant, perfectly clear data. The Sy'lar, steeped in unity, had no concept of decision-making under uncertainty. Their history was a chronicle of perfectly coordinated actions. Humanity, however, had a meticulously documented history of making do with incomplete information, of relying on individual initiative, of adapting to unexpected situations without central command. Dr. Vance's Project Babel, now given unprecedented resources, began to systematically catalog and cross-reference Sy'lar communication protocols with historical human attempts to break encryption and disrupt enemy comms. Their thought-link structure, a young cryptographer named Ben Carter pointed out, his eyes gleaming with intellectual excitement, it's incredibly efficient but also centralized. If we can introduce enough low-level, self-replicating noise into a single node, the entire network will try to process it. It's like a digital feedback loop, but on a mental level. Rostova's Cacophony Corps, instead of trying to silence the Sy'lar, began to infect their network with noise. They would use captured Sy'lar communication drones, reprogrammed to broadcast torrents of garbled, meaningless data directly into the Sy'lar's psionic thought links. It was like shouting gibberish directly into a unified mind. The Sy'lar, expecting elegant data packets, found themselves inundated with incomprehensible static. Their perfect, unified thoughts began to experience interference. Individual Sy'lar, accustomed to a harmonious chorus of shared consciousness, suddenly heard discordant notes, random thoughts, fragments of noise that were utterly alien to their ordered minds. The psychological impact was immense. The Sy'lar, whose entire society was built on perfect harmony and shared understanding, were being forced to experience the raw, unfiltered chaos of fragmented information. Their unified mind, so efficient in purity, was choking on the sheer volume of human noise. As the war progressed, the Sy'lar, for the first time in their existence, began to experience something akin to confusion, then frustration, then a profound existential terror of their own. Their unity, their perfect information, their harmonious minds, all were being undermined by a species that thrived on dissonance. High seer Valaks, their typically serene thought forms replaced by profound distress, struggled to comprehend. They are attacking our unity, their noise. It is not simply jamming our signals. It is infecting our minds. We are experiencing individual thoughts. It is chaotic. This individual thoughts was anathema to the Sy'lar. Their entire society, their very identity, was built on the collective. The human strategy of embracing individual initiative, of celebrating diverse and often conflicting perspectives, was anathema to them. It was psychological warfare of the highest order. Project Babel, under Vance's strategic direction, launched its most ambitious counter-doctrine, the echo of self. They began to broadcast highly curated, subtly manipulated snippets of human, individual thought, fragments of internal monologues, conflicting desires, irrational decisions, subjective interpretations of reality, directly into the Sy'lar's psionic network. These weren't threats. They were merely reflections of the human mind. For the Sy'lar, whose collective mind was built on perfect harmony and logical order, this was an assault on the very fabric of their being. Their unified belief in collective truth began to fray. Individual Sy'lar, accustomed to absolute adherence to consensus, began to question, to doubt, to experience moments of isolated, fragmented thoughts, an anomaly unprecedented in their history. The echo of self wasn't designed to terrify the Sy'lar. It was designed to make them understand, on a primal, incomprehensible level, the sheer, unbridled, and often beautiful chaos of the human mind. It was designed to show them a form of consciousness so vast, so complex, so utterly beyond their comprehension, that it would shatter their very concept of reality. The Sy'lar retreated. They didn't surrender. They simply pulled back, sealing themselves off from galactic society, their once proud hegemony shaken to its very core. The war ended not with a bang, but with a bewildered, disheartened silence. The Sy'lar, the ultimate purveyors of perfect information, had encountered a species that was a far greater master of noise. They had encountered the Cacophony Corps. In the aftermath, the galaxy tried to understand what had happened. Humanity, the young, chaotic species, had defeated an ancient, seemingly invincible empire. They had done so not with superior firepower, but with a unique, almost pathological embrace of their own internal and external cacophony. Dr. Alistair Vance became a galactic legend, his theories on chaotic communication and individual resilience now studied by every major species. Project Babel, though its combat mission was over, continued its research, delving deeper into the bizarre and often terrifying landscape of human thought and communication. General Rostova, now an admiral, oversaw the integration of controlled cacophony into all concordant military doctrines. She ensured that every new communication system was designed not for perfect clarity, but for resilience against interference, for the ability to transmit through noise, and for the capacity to operate with fragmented information. The Concordat, while grateful for humanity's victory, remained wary. They had seen the true power of the human capacity for chaos, for individual thought, and for overwhelming, deliberate noise. It was a power that both awed and deeply unnerved them. They had witnessed a species that could not only face down perfect information but overwhelm it, dissect it, and then weaponize its own internal discord. Years passed. The galaxy rebuilt. The threat of the Sy'lar became a chilling legend, a cautionary tale of the dangers of absolute unity. Humanity continued its chaotic, vibrant existence, but the war had left its mark. The members of the Cacophony Corps, the noise architects, carried a unique burden. They had delved into the deepest recesses of human and alien communication and had in turn been exposed to the full, unfiltered chaos of their own species and the unsettling purity of the Sy'lar. They were heroes, but they were also different. They saw the world through a lens that understood the subtle power of noise in every silent moment. Ben Carter, the young cryptographer, wrote best-selling analyses of ancient human and Sy'lar communication, demonstrating how the same principles of redundancy and noise had played out across millennia. His work became a cornerstone of galactic communication theory. Dr. Vance, in his later years, often reflected on the true meaning of the Cacophony Corps. It wasn't just about military victory. It was about consciousness itself. Humanity, a species that had evolved with a potent, if often messy, capacity for individual thought, had, over millennia, learned to thrive in a world of imperfect information. We had turned our internal discord into a living, evolving defense against external unity. When the Sy'lar unleashed their perfect silence, they were not showing humanity anything new. They were simply showing us the void we had already filled with our own voices, our own music, our own beautiful, chaotic noise. And humanity, in its bizarre, beautiful, and utterly pragmatic way, had simply turned to the Sy'lar and said, "You want to silence us? Good luck. We are the noise." The galaxy learned a profound lesson. Never underestimate a species that tolerates its own chaos. Never underestimate a people who find strength in their own individual thoughts and diverse perspectives. For in that strange, paradoxical relationship with noise, humanity had forged an unbreakable shield and an even more terrifying weapon. We were not merely survivors of silence. We were its masters. We were its creators. And if necessary, we would always be its ultimate orchestrators, ever ready to apply its dissonant lessons to the wars of tomorrow.